Hi, I'm Don, and welcome to the Music Breakdown. What you are about to see is the third and final part to every 10 out of 10 album I have ever given. If you want to see the previous two parts, they will be linked in the description. And remember that everything you are about to see was taken from my Twitch show, The Music Breakdown Live, streamed every Wednesday at 6 p.m. Mountain Standard Time to my Twitch channel, which is linked in the description. With all of that said, enjoy the video. Alright. Let's spin that wheel. Nevermind, okay. This album just still sounds like an explosion to me. It really does. It sounds like the moment when music changed. It was, for rock music, it was that. Or at least when it changed in the mainstream, that is. But it sounds like that too. Like, just that opening riff of Smells Like Teen Spirit when you start this album, it just sounds like a sea change. Which must have been why it was so exciting back in the day, but it still is to me now. Not only does this album have some of the greatest singles of all time, this band presented a sound which just transcends time to me. The rawness of the playing, but then the high-class gloss production comes together into an album which is so poppy and hooky and memorable and enjoyable to listen to, and it is not challenging at all. This is the kind of album you listen to if you just want to listen to some fucking kick-ass music, you listen to Nevermind. And I love that it's able to do that. And that is not to discredit the fact that this album legitimately speaks to angst in a wordless kind of way, like a way where it doesn't really feel like it's trying to necessarily do that. A lot of these lyrics are quite nonsensical, but it comes together into a sound which just speaks to your angst and allows you to let it out, which is why it was so, impactful back in the day. But that's also why it's impactful to this day. I think the songwriting is the best of Nirvana, period. I really do. I think this is their best set of songs just from start to finish. And even some of the tracks here, which are a little bit more on the jammy or punk side or the simpler side, they just kick ass. This track list is another home run. This is a home run. Look at this fucking track list. Oh my God. Like, to me, like, I look at this and it's just like, it's like it's shooting gold at my face. I mean, come on. This was the album that I think defined my teenagehood maybe more than any other album in my life. I listened to this to death. And Nirvana changed my life as far as music listening goes. I feel like without Nirvana, maybe more than any other band, I don't think I would be even doing this show for you right now. It is everything great about Nirvana in this tight 40-minute package. What a great record. Gotta spin the wheel. Oh shit! What are we getting next? Eh? Let England Shake. Okay. Let England Shake is an album by PJ Harvey, and it's an album that PJ Harvey made in many ways to get away from her core sound and to experiment with something completely different and to say something about what she saw as a country that she feels like she loved going away from her. It is a very critical album of her country, but in a way which reveals she does have some passion for her country left by framing the ideas of this album in a historical lens and going through all of the mistakes and tragedies that England has made in warfare. And it's that push and pull between her trying to accept her own belief in her country against what she sees it actually do, which I think is what makes this album so powerful. But for an anti-war album, in my opinion, it is the most human I've ever heard the concept be. That every time she tells these tales of death and war and tragedy, she makes it tragic because she focuses on that on-the-ground human level, that experiential level of war. Not what it does to necessarily shake a community and not what it does to shake the world, but what it does to shake the people involved in the actual conflict. And it is heartbreaking. I just think PJ Harvey fucking kills it here. I just think she absolutely kills it here. Tackling the subject from many different angles and also transitioning between the personal and the impersonal in ways which are so brilliant and so well constructed. My favorite songs here would be Let England Shake, The Glorious Land, The Words That Maketh Murder, All and Everyone, In the Dark Places, and The Color of the Earth. Those are my favorite tracks here. But wow, what a beautiful, haunting, haunting record. Let's spin the wheel. Oh shit. Oh shit, what's going on? This album is an all-timer because it is an album that will never lose its relevancy or power. And I feel that with the world Marvin Gaye was living in and criticizing at the time, even if we hopefully manage to take ourselves past that, this will live as an eternal reminder of what that was like. And Marvin Gaye does it in such a sympathetic way. There isn't really an anger on this album so much as there is just a deep sadness to be experiencing what he sees people experiencing. And that's what makes this album so powerful to me. He sounds like he's disappointed in his fellow man, in that he wants to find a way to make it positive. In his case, it's holiness, but that sense of God and religion and spirituality on this album, it presents a kind of spirituality that you don't even need to make it about God or religion, but it's that sense of hope and positivity that Marvin Gaye displays here that keeps this album on its feet. Well, let's actually talk about the performances and the production, which is really maybe more than anything what sells it for me. A lot of soul artists and a lot of Motown artists, you know, their songs are slathered in orchestration and horns and strings. That's just a common thing, but here it sounds heavenly. It sounds as good as it ever will. Some of the best orchestrations and composition work you'll ever hear on an album, period. And that's further assisted by the fact that these songs on the first side, well, and actually both sides, turn into giant medleys of songs that flow into each other seamlessly with these melodies that repeat and reprise in amazing ways. The production on this album is immaculate. It is immaculate. And Marvin Gaye's singing is even better. He sings these words with so much conviction, you cannot help but be right there with him in believing them. And I feel like this is the perfect album to listen to with the place that we're at now as well in the world. It allows you to keep a chin up and to keep a positive view and a legitimate want for things to get better instead of an acceptance that they won't. And it's something we maybe need now, maybe more even than we did in 1971 when this album came out. But yeah, this is a gorgeous album. This is a gorgeous album, one of the greatest things ever created by humankind. What a good album. We're gonna spin the wheel. We're getting there. We're getting there, folks. Rumours. I will never not love this album. I will never not love this album. This is another example of like a home run track list. The single power alone. I mean, are you kidding me? You have an album with Dreams and Don't Stop and Go Your Own Way and The Chain and You Make Love and Fun. They're all on the same album. Like, how? That's already impressive enough. So yeah, the pop songwriting is amazing. The guitar playing is amazing. Really, the instrumental work on here is fantastic in general. Lindsey Buckingham's guitar is so good, and the bass playing is so good too. All of that's perfect. The production is amazing. It is that dry radio 70s sound done to its fullest potential in a way that almost no other artists ever do. It takes, honestly, one of the most boring sounds of the 70s and turns it into one of the most exciting and memorable aspects of this album. The backstory, the tension that you can feel in these songs, the anger and bitterness that you can feel in these songs that really must have impassioned them to write such an amazing collection of tracks. But you can feel that in every word and every song, and I love that about this album. It's more than just a pop album, you know? There's so many great tracks on here. If I had to pick favorites, Secondhand News, Dreams, Don't Stop, Go Your Own Way, The Chain, and Gold Dust Woman would be my favorites. This is an incredible record. An incredible record. I love this album to death. Let's spin the wheel. Abbey Road? No, I never loved a man the way I like. This wheel's ridiculous. I never loved a man the way I love you by Aretha Franklin. This album blew my mind. You know, this album blew my fucking mind. I knew Aretha Franklin was a great singer. I'd heard Aretha Franklin tracks. I mean, at the very least, everybody's heard Respect. But like, you know, You Make Me Feel Like a Natural Woman and stuff. You hear these songs, right? These are songs almost everybody knows. But what I didn't account for was how amazing her backing band is too on this album. Like, this album, everybody involved in this record is absolutely firing off on all cylinders. The backing band is performing with so much conviction and energy. The backing singers are doing the same. They sound like they are just as into these songs as Aretha is. And then, of course, Aretha fucking Franklin. Oh my God. What a voice. It is undeniably one of the most powerful voices in music of all time. She is insanely talented. She is an amazing singer, but she has conviction, a belief in the songs that she's covering. It's not like she's just doing them just to show off. She wants to make these songs the best version that she can possibly make, to believe in the songs, believe in the words, and treat it almost as if she's the one who wrote them. Respect is definitely the best example of that, and the best song here, but that's just by default. But she took a song, Otis Redding's song, and turned it into a completely, not only a completely different track, but with a completely different meaning and energy, and she turned it into her song. That's her song now. She owns it. Otis Redding's version is amazing, but Aretha Franklin owns Respect. And there are many other songs from Aretha Franklin, or covers from Aretha Franklin, that I could say the same thing about. She does write her own songs on here too. A couple of these songs are written by her, which are equally amazing. It shows how great of a songwriter she was, and it makes me wish we could have gotten even more songs just written by her. But the cover selection on here, like the selection of songs, is so amazing. They selected the best possible songs for her to cover here, and she and her backing band and backing vocalist turned them into her style and made them uniquely hers. None of these songs sound so much like their original versions that they're almost indistinguishable and you're only listening for Aretha. You are listening for this song itself. She turns it into its own thing. The piano-led sound of this album, I love how a lot of the songs feel a little bit more jammy, just a little bit like more spontaneous, like song sections can just burst out of nowhere in exciting ways. Aretha can hit these huge high notes in ways that you just don't see coming. The backing vocalists add so much. They follow her every step to bring these songs the fullest potential that they can possibly have. And I mean, it's unreal to me. It's unreal to me. I think this album is just incredible. My favorite tracks here are Respect, Drown in My Own Tears, I Never Loved a Man the Way I Love You, Baby, 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 Save Me, and A Change Is Gonna Come would probably be my favorite tracks, but this track listing is perfect. It's perfect. All right, let's spin that wheel. Doolittle, let's go. Pixies are one of the best bands of all time. I love this band to death, and this album is every single thing that is great about them in the best possible package they ever made. I think this album does an impeccable job of presenting the weirder side of the band in a more accessible way. Nobody can deny hearing this, especially for the first time, that this band is off the fucking walls weird, but they do it in a way where they write so many basically pop songs. They take their sound and they make it accessible and listenable and enjoyable beyond just the quirk of it. There are so many great hooks. There are, hooks for days across this album. Amazing production. The bass tone is one of my favorites I've ever heard. And I love the balance between the more inaccessible stranger tracks with some of the poppier, more radio ready kind of songs. That is something that the Velvet Underground and Nico perfected on the Velvet Underground and Nico, and it's something that you hear here as well, to relate it to something else that I've previously talked about. And it's an album where every little silence between each track is the perfect length. It is rapid fire. It just feels like you're being hit one by one with the best fucking songs of all time. This album is astonishing, and it is a powerhouse of a record. This is probably my favorite all-time alt-rock album. This or OK Computer. It's like right between the two, but God, this album is so fucking good. So good. All right, let's get that out of here and let's spin the wheel. You heard Here Comes Your Band at a Walmart? Sick. Funeral. This album is magic. This is pure indie magic. This is the most magical indie album of all time. Maybe only rivaled by In the Airplane Over the Sea, but this is magical in an entirely different way. The band captures the feeling of suburban nostalgia and just nostalgia in general with a sense of wonderment and amazement. Like, the band is amazed to even be alive. But don't get me wrong, this is not a positive record by any stretch. That nostalgia is sad, and it comes with a sense of loss and grief that the album also profoundly makes use of. All of these things to say, though, this album still has that indie sense of quirk and fun to it on certain tracks. It just has such a great track list. Like, the songwriting is fucking perfect. And I love the production, you know, it's a little rough around the edges, but it sounds aged. It has this like timeless sound to it. It doesn't really sound like an album that came out of 2004. My favorite tracks are Neighborhood 1 and 2, Neighborhood 4, Wake Up, Rebellion, and In the Back Seat. Those would be my favorite tracks, but this album is impeccable. Impeccable. Let's spin the wheel. We still got 2 Beatles albums. Laughing Stock. Laughing Stock is an album unlike many other albums I've ever heard. It brings you in the room with the musicians into this tense, emotional atmosphere where they're able to experiment with so many different emotions at once and so many different colors and especially volumes. Album is notable most of all to me maybe for how quiet it can be. And it has dynamic range. It allows itself to be loud when it thinks it's called for. But even in some of these louder moments, they still have an amazing sense of quiet and a sense of silence and space that they create. It just sounds so pained. It just sounds so beautiful. There's so much feeling in this album and so much color that they're able to bring out with these sounds, but colors that you're not used to experiencing in music maybe. Mark Hollis's vocals on here also carry a lot of it too. Like, to have the band already doing so many unique and interesting things instrumentally, and then to add on top of that one of the greatest singers of all time with some beautiful, beautiful lyrics, I think it's just unreal. My favorite tracks on this are Meerman, After the Flood, Taphead, and Rune. Those are probably my favorite tracks. This whole thing is so good. What a beautiful track list, beautiful album, just goddamn bone-chilling record. That just moves me to my core. And let's move on. Spin that wheel. Got 6 more to go. Foxtrot. Oh, yes. God fucking damn. Genesis's sound and their aesthetic, it lit a fire inside of me in a way that few bands or albums ever have. But Foxtrot to me is the greatest encapsulation of their fantastical prog rock sound. The songwriting on here is perfect. It is perfect prog. It is prog at its best, in my opinion. This is my favorite prog album of all time, probably. The keyboard is the lead instrument on this album, and the keyboard work is so joyous and fantastical, and it has such a vibe to it. And the songwriting is beautiful, and Peter Gabriel's vocals are just imperfect enough in a way where it brings out some character to the group. But the things he's singing about are so satirical and quirky and funny and silly, but sometimes also profoundly sad or deep. I mean, he does so many different things, and I think his lyricism is another aspect of this album that is just incredible. For the long songs, they do such a good job of making them hooky and exciting. Like, there's always little things you remember from them and want to go back to and hear again, moments that get stuck in your head, and amazing melodies, and they pop right out of the record. And of course, this album features unbelievable 20-minute suite, Supper's Ready, which is my favorite song of all time still to this day. I think that song in particular is just unbelievably good. Like the movements, the way that it does everything that Genesis could ever do with their sound, the quirkiness, the silliness, the goofiness, but then the transcendental quality, the legitimately lifting and otherworldly sound that they can sometimes accomplish. They throw it all into this one massive magnum opus of a song, which never fails to blow my mind. I think this album is perfection. My favorite tracks are Watcher of the Skies, Can Utility and the Coastliners, and Supper's Ready. Those would be my absolute favorite tracks, but this album is perfect. This album is perfect. Let's move on and spin that wheel. Songs for the Deaf. I Need a Saga. What's the saga? It's Songs for the Deaf. They clapped for me because I was quoting the album. This album is, this album's unreal. It really is to me. The impeccable collection of just heavy ass fucking rock songs. Like this album just rips and shreds like few rock albums ever do. Wow. You know, it's just mind blowing. There's so many like exciting, intense, heavy, crazy tracks. And much like Led Zeppelin 2, another impeccable hard rock album, there's room for adventurousness, for taking these songs in strange, unpredictable directions, tracks with a lot of fake out moments, and just constantly exciting things. The band is having so much fun creating these songs and throwing little bits in there that throw the listener off, and so many things that just keep it interesting. It's not basic in any way. And the sound is the best example of the 2000s compression rock sound you'll ever hear. The 2000s certainly made many mistakes when it came to how producers decided to produce popular rock acts, but here you can actually get a sense for what that heavily compressed sound can really do. This album shreds. The tone of the guitar and bass, the way that it's just so loud and in your face the whole time, is crazy. It sounds so good and so smooth too. This album is dark and sexy, and it's so good. There's so many great tracks. I mean, I love the radio broadcast skits. They're so funny. So many quotable lines, funny moments. What a fucking great album. What a fucking great album. Some of my favorite songs here: You Think I Ain't Worth a Dollar, But I Feel Like a Millionaire, No One Knows, Song for the Dead, Six Shooter, Go With the Flow, God Is in the Radio, and Song for the Deaf. Those are my absolute favorite tracks. One of the best rock albums of all time, without a doubt. Let's spin the wheel. We got 4 more albums to go. Okay. Abbey Road. Abbey Road is perfect. Much like Sgt. Pepper's, I feel like this is them at their most adventurous, the moment where they realized, like, coming out of the White Album, they could do anything. They could do so much, but here they're able to take those disparate elements that they experimented with on White Album and turn them into a very cohesive project, which they do with Flying Colors. In a lot of ways, it's sort of like what I said about how Revolver was them throwing a bunch of ideas at the wall, and then Sgt. Pepper was them finding those ideas and finding a way to make them fit into the same world. I feel like you could say the same thing about Abbey Road after the White Album. The White Album, they throw all these ideas at the wall, and then in Abbey Road, they piece them together into some sort of coherent project and coherent world and idea. The medley is one of the most exciting and fun and colorful moments in rock music, and then, of course, you have some of the Beatles' most craziest tracks, honestly, like fucking I Want You, She's So Heavy. I mean, still unbelievable to me that they recorded that in 1969. Some of their best songs, like Come Together and Something and Octopus's Garden and Here Comes the Sun and, you know, Golden Slumbers. And I mean, wow. It is an album that speaks for itself, and my favorite tracks are some of the ones I just mentioned: Come Together, Something, Oh Darling, Octopus's Garden, I Want You, Here Comes the Sun. Then I would say She Came In Through the Bathroom Window, Golden Slumbers, and The End. Those would be my favorite tracks on this album, but what a brilliant record. And now we're gonna spin that wheel. Got 3 more albums to go. I didn't expect it to be down to these 3, but then again, I don't know what 3 I expected it to come down to. Revolver. So we're talking about Beatles all over again. This is where the Beatles decided that they could do whatever they wanted, and they threw a bunch of fucking ideas at the wall. But what's so good about it is how it manages to take all of those ideas and those crazy ideas that they had and put them into the package of an earlier Beatles album. I mean, really, songwriting wise, it reminds me, the flow of the album reminds me of earlier records from them. It's very poppy, it's very radio ready for these songs, but they're so adventurous within that format. It just feels like they were willing to do so much, and that everything that they did worked and resulted in a track list which is a total knockout. I mean, God, look at these songs. Just like, wow. You know, very few bands could ever hope to have this many ideas and have them all turn out this well, to the point where you could list all these songs and they're some of the most famous songs from the band. This is an incredible record. My favorite songs on here are Taxman, Eleanor Rigby, I'm Only Sleeping, Love You Too, Here, There, and Everywhere. Honestly, the entire opening stretch of the album, She Said, And Your Bird Can Sing, and Got to Get You Into My Life, and Tomorrow Never Knows. Those would be my highlights. I think this album is amazing, though. What an explosion. What an explosion for the band and for music as a whole. 2 more albums. I'm curious which of these I'm going to end up talking about last. Oh my god. Okay, well, that dictates our last 2 albums. For a 1990s alternative rock album, Siamese Dream is beautiful. It's beautiful. It is a beautiful record. This band captures a dreamy, exciting sound, and simultaneously one that is radio ready, that is immediate, that is heavy. They do so many things. Like, they have this heavy, thick guitar sound, some really hard rock tracks on here, but they bring it into this context, which makes it more beautiful and nostalgic, combining these two things into an impeccable combination. The songs, a lot of them are about burnout and depression, but put into a context where it convinces you that there's something to live for. It's just a track listing of like amazing songs that show everything that was great about Smashing Pumpkins, that they could have these hard ass songs that are legitimately heavy as fuck, and then they could have these tracks which are beautiful and slow and moving and sort of profound. And you know, they had this ability to do so many things, and this album shows that off better than any other album in their discography, in my opinion, because I just think this track listing is perfect. Some of my favorite songs of this album are Cheer Up Rock, Today, Hummer, Soma, Geek USA, Mayonnaise, and Silverfuck. Those are my favorite tracks on this album. But this album's astonishing record. One that never gets old to me. And I guess finally we're going to talk about The Glow Part 2 by the Microphones. This album was challenging for me. It really was. I think that when I went into this album, I expected an indie folk album alongside something like Nucho Mocotel or something, which it, you know, a little bit, kind of, you could put it in like a similar vibe. Like, okay, if you like Nucho Mocotel, you'll probably like this. But this album goes for such a more unique and strange directions than even that album does, and I was just not prepared for it. And I don't think I was fully prepared for this album for a really long time. I just didn't get it until I finally recognized what makes this album so unique and amazing. And it's the fact that Phil Elverum on this album was able to create what feels like a dream. It's like the album itself and Phil's sense of even reality and musicianship dissolves and turns into this weird, surreal dream state. The opening 3 tracks are fucking all-timers, obviously, and I feel like they set you up for a bit of a more direct album, and the album ends up actually being, because from that point on, this track list just has twists and turns. Pretty much after Headless Horseman, this album has twists and turns unlike most albums I've ever heard. It goes in so many weird places, it transitions in such odd ways. Songs have sections that just seemingly come out of nowhere. There's weird effects all over this. Weird-ass songs, honestly, all things considered, and it takes dark and freaky directions at points. This feels like dream logic, you know, like how in a dream you can be taken between just completely confusing elements, but there's always like an emotion or an idea that you feel like you're experiencing all throughout the dream, no matter where you go or what happens or what kind of elements show up and just come out of nowhere or make no sense otherwise. And within that, I mean, Phil writes amazing fucking indie tracks all over this. Like, the lyrics are incredibly, incredibly sad. It is a very sad breakup album, and it's almost over dramatic, which Phil has even said before about it, with the way that it tries to relate that to death. But see, I like that a lot because, like, it would feel that way, right? I mean, what's the point of hiding how life-ending this felt for him? I don't understand what the point of that would be. This is a crazy ass album. Like, flow wise, this is one of the weirdest album flows I've ever experienced in a way that completely works. And not only that, but this album has some of the fucking craziest, loudest moments I've ever heard in music. Like, Samurai Sword is insane. It's crazy. This album is crazy. And I love how disheveled it is too. That disheveled nature of the album just adds to it. It is a very intriguing record that really just, I don't know, it puts me in a different place listening to it. My favorite tracks on this are I Want Wind to Blow, The Glow Part 2, and The Moon, and Headless Horseman, The Mansion, Map, I Want to Be Cold, I Felt Your Shape, and Samurai Sword. Those are my favorite tracks, but this is a fucking great record. And yeah, that's really all I have to say about all my 10 out of 10 albums. We've gone through this entire wheel, and we actually finished it, y'all. So I hope you enjoyed that, because I sure enjoyed that. And if you're watching this on YouTube, remember that you can always check out the Music Breakdown live every Wednesday at 6 p.m. Mountain Standard Time on my Twitch channel, which will be linked in the description, and I always will hope to see you there. Thank you for watching.